Yo, what's going on, everybody? I wanted to hop on here and tell you guys another story. So, this one is about the worst house party I've ever been to. And by worst, I mean greasiest. Like, I was just surrounded by low lives here, and I've hung out with some pretty scummy people before, but this takes the cake. So, let's get into it. This is a couple years ago, around 2022. It was a Halloween party, and I was reconnecting with friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. Now, sometimes that can go well, I've reconnected with people I hadn't seen in years and it's been fun and we kind of just picked up right where we left off. But with these guys, it was different. I hadn't seen them in over 10 years. They were my early, elementary school and early high school friends, even, maybe late high school as well. But after high school, completely fell off, switched friend groups entirely, and that was for a reason. I mean, those guys, they didn't really have any drive or ambition, and I had kind of hit my limit on degenerate activity I was willing to commit and be a part of. When I was younger, I didn't give a shit about any of that, and I was down for it. And these guys shared an interest with me, which was basically just getting fucked up, smoking a lot of weed, stealing, that type of stuff. But once I matured and got a little older and was leaving high school, I realized I wanted to switch my life up. I wanted to have a good life. And these guys didn't really show any signs of changing. So I kind of cut ties and moved on. And it was one of the better choices I've ever made. But I still would bump into them in my town. I live in a small town, so I would see them here and there, and I was always friendly with them, and they would always invite me to shit, like come get fucked up and drink on Friday or a Saturday, or somebody was having a party, stuff like that. So I would see them, and they would offer for me to come to things, and I would deny it, come up with any excuse I could. But eventually, I hit the point where I felt like I kind of had to entertain it. I had said no or not shown up to things for like literally years at this point. So they finally invited me to a Halloween party, and I've heard that a few other people I knew were going. So I was like, all right, if they're going, this will be fine. It's not that big of a deal. I'll just get drunk, smoke a little weed, and socialize with these guys like I would at any party, right? How bad could it be? Well, that turned out to be a mistake because the house we were in, it was basically abandoned. I mean, it was on old farmland and the house was just an old farmhouse, but nobody was maintaining either the land or the house. This place had no heat in it, and this is Canada around Halloween time. It is very cold outside. I mean, I don't understand how this family was living here. Everything was destroyed and falling apart. Multiple places in the home you could see outside through the floorboards. It was just it was a rough house, man. If you drove by it, you would think it's abandoned, but there was actually 50 people in there having a house party, including me. There was also a guy outside having a bonfire by himself, but he seemed odd. We'll get to him. So once we got there, I started drinking, smoking, socializing, small talk, and stuff like that, and catching up with guys I hadn't seen in many years. I didn't want to do it, I was putting it off, but I was enjoying myself, I won't lie. But that's when I started to realizing that, like, when I was catching up with them, I was doing the majority of the talking. I was asking them lots of questions and about themselves and what they had been up to and what's their plan and are they seeing anybody, yada, 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 the old shit, the stuff you talk about when you're older. Well, none of them were like doing any of it. Like they didn't have many updates. It was kind of same old. And I'm like, well, hasn't it been like, you know, 6, 7 years? How is it same old? They all seemed to me like they were stuck. I still live in the town I grew up in and I live at home, but my social life and my professional career and my interests and all of that stuff has grown exponentially since I left high school. Those guys didn't seem like it had at all. They seemed stuck. It was just a bad vibe. I was like, okay, whatever. So I just made jokes and, referenced stories that happened way back in the day, and we were laughing about that. And I still was able to catch up about their parents and all that type of stuff. But speaking of parents, the guy who was throwing the house party, their parents were notoriously partiers, and like even in high school would be completely a part of these guys' house parties. And that was still the case, except the mom was no longer in the picture. It was just the dad, and he was just getting obliterated. Like, he was probably the most fucked up person in the whole house. He was also doing, like, the hardest drugs, and openly doing them. It just was kind of wild. And the guy who was having the house party, whose dad was fucked up, that guy had also now had a child with his high school girlfriend, and that child was like at the party as well. Like, I mean, they were an infant, they were being held and nurtured and like people were going up saying, "Oh, they're so cute," blah blah blah. But it just didn't seem like a party a kid should be at, that especially that small. Like they couldn't walk, you know? And it was like late as fuck. I was like, what is this kid even doing up? I don't know. It was weird to me. Fuck, I just hit my mic, sorry. But yeah, it was really weird to me. I don't know why that kid was there, but it didn't really surprise me. Now, I know I said like none of these guys had any life updates and were up to anything interesting. They were stuck, and that is true, but I forgot to mention that some of the updates they had were all just incredibly negative. Like some of the dudes were unemployment, and like one of the guys' moms was on trial for fraud, some type of fraud with the government and collecting unemployment, and I don't know. I don't know what was going on there. Some bullshit, some greasy bullshit. And he was like running up some like workers comp scam and had put on a ton of weight and had a fucked up arm. I mean, this guy literally fell off a ladder and had a destroyed arm and shoulder to the point where he needed surgery, and he had recently had surgery. Well, he got like during this evening, he was like drinking Jack Daniels just straight out of the bottle, no mixer, no nothing, and doing other drugs and shit like that. His stitches were like open. He was bleeding through his bandage and shirt, and people kept pointing it out, including myself. And he was like laughing about it, like being like, I don't give a fuck. I don't know. I was just like, holy shit, these people are very greasy. Another guy had put on like, I guess a lot of them had just put on a lot of weight, probably just from drinking so excessively and doing nothing. But a bunch of them were on unemployment, put on weight, and were alcoholics. And like, you're like 26. Oldest person there was probably like 28. You know what I mean? I was just like, holy shit, it's a little early for this, but the dad at this house, I mean, I guess they're just following in the footsteps. It's negative and sad, but it's true. Now, I think the kicker of the whole evening that really set it off and I want to leave now is when there was a guy who was outside. I went outside to take a piss. I forgot to mention the bathroom was just horrendous. I wasn't dealing with it. I just kept pissing outside. So I walked out into the farm field and took a piss. And when I was coming back, I noticed there was like a guy out front just having a bonfire by himself. And I had been inside all evening, so I was like, fuck it, I'll have a smoke. I'll have a dart out here with this guy. And I'm posting up talking to him, and I realized it's a guy I went to high school with. Like I knew of this guy. He didn't know me, but mutual friends again. And he was telling me about his life, and he was telling me how he can't be inside because basically the music is too loud, the bass is too. He was in a car accident and he had brain damage from the car accident. And based on his like speech and everything, I thought he was telling the truth. It seemed like he was telling the truth because he was like stuttering and slurring, and he just seemed slower. I don't know. So it made sense. He claimed to have been in an accident that gave him brain damage, and we had a long conversation, and I felt bad for the guy, and I walked away from there being like, damn, he seems like a pretty nice guy, and that's a really unfortunate situation. So I went inside and I found the guys I used to hang out with. They were smoking a bong and shit. So I posted up with them and I started explaining what Tim had told me outside. And I was kind of like, holy shit, that's like the craziest story I've ever heard. That's really sad. And they were like looking at each other. And then one of the dudes spoke up, basically being like, oh yeah, he forgot to mention that he was blackout hammered and he caused the accident. And in that accident, he had killed somebody. And that person was a child. And I was like, what the fuck? There's no way. Like, I didn't believe them at first, because also I had noticed I had picked up a vibe that like nobody was fucking with this guy throughout the night. That's why I also originally chatted with him. I was like, bro, what are you doing out here? Come inside. You know what I mean? Like, and everybody was just kind of walking by him, or if they were smoking outside, they would not talk to him at all. He would try and chime in on conversations earlier in the evening, and like nobody would bite. So I felt bad for him. And once I learned this information, I didn't even believe it. I was like Googling shit and they were telling me all about it. And I found the article. I actually found it's true. And he was out on bail. And the craziest thing about that is the fact that when I saw him, he didn't need to bring up the whole like brain damage, can't go inside, accident, pity me spiel. He could have just made some other bullshit up, but he decided to like try and gain sympathy from me. He finessed me into giving him sympathy and making him seem like a victim, but he took a life of somebody. So anyways, after this, I went and found somebody I came with and I was like, yo, let's get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't know. Fuck this. I just said goodbye to the people I used to hang out with, acted like I had a good time and peaced the fuck out of there. But that was a really good reminder on why I ditched those guys in the past and why my new friends are just tenfold better. I mean, it was the right decision to cut those guys out, and I probably will never see or hang out with any of them again. If you feel like your friends don't have any ambition and are kind of complacent and content where they are, it might be time to reassess, because if you have people around you who strive for better things in holy shit, a successful life, you're going to go places as well. It's going to motivate you. So take that into consideration. Anyways, if you guys made it this far, I appreciate you. Peace.